Good evening. Going to call the order, the Committee of Infrastructure on August 28, 2019, at 7 p.m. in the Automatic Chamber. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Alderman at Large Michael O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Tom Lopez. Here. Alderman Jim Schmidt is here. Alderman Ernest Jetty, not here. Alderman Ken Gidge.
Here. Okay. Also in attendance, we have Alderman Clay and Alderman Clemens.
And Alderman Kelly.
And Alderman Kelly, thank you. All right, I'm going to open up at this time for public comment. If anybody has any comment they'd like to bring up to the board, just give me a signal as per custom. Please state your name and your address, and then you can give us your remarks.
Hi everyone, Melvin Moran Jr., 30 Dickerman Street, Nashua. I'm here to actually support the Youth Advisory Committee's petition for this ordinance. I think it's a great thing for the city to give the students an opportunity to have free parking at the library. The library is initially created for free public service to the community, and this is a great step in a direction to give the kids back an opportunity to utilize the library without facing a tax to use the services there. And hopefully, as this might be a stepping stone to something in the future that eliminates all parking fees at the library in itself. And it just seeing the presentation that these guys have posted shows such responsibility to their community to come here and be so invested and teach such responsibility to their other classmates. Very impressed by it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. Mary Lou Blaisdell, 32 Webster Street, Nashua, New Hampshire. I'm here speaking on behalf of the Downtown Improvement Committee. We have not had the opportunity to see or hear this presentation, but we are aware of the ordinance in front of you. And our committee did discuss it at length at our last meeting on August 9th. It is the committee's unanimous opinion at this point in time that we do not go forward with this, and I'll tell you why. We have parking downtown is an issue at all times for a variety of different people in a variety of different areas. We have talked with the head of parking and with the Economic Development Office regarding the parking situation downtown and where we might need to tweak it. And the parking, Jill's, the head of parking, Jill, along with Tim Cummings, are preparing an RFP to go out for us to undertake a complete parking study of downtown. And this parking study will allow us to look at all parking downtown, what we need to do to improve it, where we may need to reduce parking fees, where we may need to increase parking fees. Part of this study will include the library parking lot. So we may, at some point in time, need to look at that lot and say X amount of spots in that lot would be free at all time for anybody. It would be our hope that your committee and the Board of Aldermen would recommend holding off on any implementation of any parking changes until that parking study is complete. We find that it's very difficult to make a change and then have a study done and then have to undo the change or tweak the change. This parking study will go into effect as soon as the RFP is approved and a company is hired to do it. So it is going to happen very soon, and it would be our unanimous opinion for the best of downtown and the citizens to get a complete study done before any changes are made. Thank you. But I would also like to commend you guys for what you're going to present and your activity in this. I think it's great.
I see we did have somebody come in late. We're at public comment. Anybody else would like to come up and address the committee?
I found this on the web. Or did have somebody come in late.
Don't you just love Siri?
Make public comment?
You say the one word and it's on mute. We're gonna fire her. Okay. Anybody else would like to have a comment? Okay, moving on then to communications.
We have a communication from Mary Lou Blaisdell, Chair, on behalf of the Downtown Improvement Committee. Ordinance 19-051, providing free library parking for up to 3 hours for Nashua students using the Nashua Public Library.
Okay. And this was referred to the committee on 8/13/2019. There being no objection, I'll accept the communication and place it on file. Unfinished business,
There is none.
new business resolutions,
There are none.
new business ordinances, and at this time, I'm going to advise the clerk, since we do have people here that did bring before us a presentation, I am going to go out of order, and I will call to order 019050. If the clerk could read that, please. No, excuse me, I got the wrong, 051.
051, providing free library parking for up to 3 hours for Nashua students using the Nashua Public Library.
Okay, and at this time, I would like to request our presenters and Mr. Cummings, if you want to come up and sit with us and enjoy the presentation.
Just pick a desk. Who wants to drive?
Alderman Kelly,
Thank you. If I could just give a quick intro.
and then also, too, please introduce our guests as
I
well.
will. So I had an opportunity this summer. I had a lot of excited young people who were interested in getting involved at the city committee. At the city level. And I talked to the mayor in the mayor's office, and I put together a small informal group of kids. They've been coming every single week. In our initial brainstorm, we kind of came up with what are some of the ideas that would make Nashua better for you, what would keep you coming back. We had a number of college students who are unfortunately unable to be here because they are all back at school now. But they came in earnest and did the work all summer long. So this idea was something that was born from them, something that they talked about, and I've been talking to this group of students and quite a few since I ran for office. And the library has come up multiple times in terms of wanting to access it, making it easier for students to come downtown. They'll go through all this, but one of the things they said is oftentimes we go to Starbucks or we go to Barnes & Noble because it's easier for us to just go there and it's free parking. And through our conversation with Jen, we did talk to Tim Cummings as well as Jill. We just wanted to underline that those resources are there for students, and if we were going to enter into anything in terms of library parking, students really felt like it was the absolute starting point for this. So I'm going to introduce them and let them walk you through one other note, public comment. I appreciate the comments from Mary Lou. When they talked about this, they had not had the ability to hear this presentation from us. And so I'm hoping that they will get a little bit out of tonight as well. So we have George. You can introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm George, and I'm a senior at Nashville South.
This is Asma.
I'm Asma. I am a junior at Nashua South.
And I'm Steven, and I'm a junior at Nashua North.
I'm glad to see North is represented at least. Okay, very good. Welcome all. Thank you.
So I'm going to be quiet now.
So this is the parking ordinance for free parking for students in Nashville at the Nashville Public Library.
So we first started discussing this when we were at one of our meetings, and the library parking meters were actually broken. So on social media, we had a bunch of people talking how it was so easy to go to the library, and they kind of discussed how they'd be more apt to go and use the library resources if the parking was free. So then we approached this from the perspective of students, where we thought none of our friends, none of our fellow students really use the library resources. They'd rather go to Barnes & Noble or Starbucks where there's free parking. So we tried to The goal of this is trying to remove a barrier and get students to try to use library resources more.
So this would be for high school students that go to North, South, BG, and any other high schools, and college students, which include Rivier and Nashua Community College, and any students that are eligible for a library card. And so that means that they live, work, or study in Nashua.
So the first reason why we thought this would be a good idea is to remove a potential financial barrier. Also, it ensures that the library resources that the city is already paying for are accessible to all students, and this will enhance that student's educational experience. And finally, it encourages students to come downtown. I know a lot of the students, a lot of my friends will go to Barnes & Noble, free parking there, and we'll study for good amount of time. But if there was free parking at the Nashville Public Library, there would definitely be a lot more students that would go there.
And also, personally, studying at home is like sometimes distracting to me because I have a younger brother. He watches cartoons and like it's pretty loud, and I really need to focus. And if I go to Barnes and Noble, there's also distractions there. But like it's free parking, so I go there. But if the library had free parking, people are obligated to be quiet in the library. So it would be easier for me to study there, and I'm sure lots of students agree with me because studying is very important during junior year and throughout high school because like it's a path towards our future.
So finally is this implementation. So there will be a system of laminated passes. There will be about up to 20 of them. And there will be a 3-hour limit to that, to that one visit. And what will happen is when a student arrives to the library, they'll present their student ID, and that'll be held as collateral so that when they grab that pass and they bring it back and then they finish their amount of time in the library, when they bring back that laminated pass, at that point, they'll get their student ID back.
And just so the committee knows, this was something that we did chat through quite a bit in terms of what's the best way to do it, what's the lowest barrier of not having people abuse it. We had talked about like, do we issue passes? But then we did discuss in length, well, what if I give it to my mom and my mom uses it? So we felt like this way, even though it's a little clunky, they got to go get the pass and put it in their car, we really cut down on people abusing this privilege.
So we also analyzed the financial aspect of this. Considering that the spots won't be used 100% of the time, and we're only taking a fourth of the 80 non-handicapped spots, the financial impact is minimal. And I'd also like to talk about even if it might create a little extra paperwork when we go and create a proposal and look at parking in the future, if we can help kids have access to resources within the library, I think it can be worth just a small amount of extra work.
That's all.
Questions?
Okay, Alderman Lopez.
Great presentation. Did you guys speak to the library itself about this?
Yes.
Yeah, we talked with Jen. She sat in on a couple of our meetings. So.
She's here tonight. I can answer that as well. Yeah, so we did have some discussions with Jen, and we talked to her about implementation with her staff and making sure that this wouldn't be an undue burden to them. I don't want to speak for her, but she was very happy to entertain the idea of allowing kids to get connection to those resources. I know in the basement has had a complete transformation, and there's a ton of great space down there that's underutilized now that we don't have a video catalog of hundreds and hundreds of videos.
Well, just to clarify, I was at National Goes Back to School, and I asked several library staff, and they were unanimously in support of it. I just wanted to see and have you had the opportunity to express that you had actually communicated the process and what you were looking for with the library staff.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Okay, Alderman Lopez.
Is everybody getting good grades over here?
They're go-getters.
I do have a question, and you did a wonderful presentation, and you're bringing up something that I think we definitely need to take a look at. That being said, here comes the other side of the shoe that's going to drop. But in the letter that we did receive by Ms. Blaisdell, who is the chair of the Downtown Improvement Committee, and in her letter, it did stipulate, and in quoting the letter, if we decide to provide free parking for one demographic, meaning the student parking, we must also consider requests from others. And she gave the examples of senior citizens, mothers with children, to name a few. And being a state rep, we did have a bill that came before us where one person wanted to name a pregnancy as being debilitating and to have access to handicap parking. And that bill didn't get through. But in looking at that, where do you weigh the balance for us into looking at the students and mothers with children who are, sometimes difficult to move, or senior citizens? Where do they fit into your plan? Should they equally have benefit for other parking or access?
I can say a little bit, and then you can. So the primary goal of this thing is to enhance educational experience. That's the primary goal, and so this ordinance was just one of the ways that we can reach that end. As far as other demographics, that's a separate issue. I'm sure that those can be handled on a case-by-case basis. But enhancing students' access to educational resources was our primary motivation for this ordinance.
And I would just echo that. I think our initial goal in sitting down the very first time is what can we do for students in Nashua and how can we make them feel more connected to the community. And when we started, we were unaware of the fact that there was an RFP going on. I know there's been a ton of work on parking downtown. I appreciate all of that, and I appreciate all the knowledge and experience that the Downtown Improvement Committee brings to this. I just think that personally, I would like to see library parking free. That's a totally different conversation for everybody. But I think if you're going to make an argument for anyone, students absolutely make the most sense to start. And I think if you're going to do a study anyways, this might be really good fodder as they're doing the study. We're talking about 10 to 20 passes, and we left that flexible so that we could talk to you guys and see what how you were feeling about it.
Alderman Lopez.
I dislike the rabbit hole that what if we do something for one group, then don't we have to do it for everybody? Because as legislators, our job is specifically to look at the needs of the community. So if constituents in the community come forward with a need and are particularly able to present that need as effectively as I see here, I'm inclined to take that as a presentation of need. So I personally, I dislike hearing the question, what if we have to do this for more people? What if other people ask? Because we should answer those questions too, and we should be willing to take those on a case-by-case. However, I would also point out, elderly people are students, and single mothers are students. The Riviera program has a RISE program. It has plenty of non-traditional students. If those particular students live closer to downtown and could benefit from access to the library without an economic barrier and may or may not have to take the bus to Riviera and use their library, I'm not opposed to them using our public library as well. There's still a finite cap on how many people can do it, and that means multiple populations are being served. I also have worked with any number of single mothers who go to Nashua Community College and are struggling with raising children and going to school and then having an effective place to study and do their work. And I happen to know the library is an ideal location for them because there are story hours, there is a teacher, or there is a children's room where parents can be working, but their kids are in a safe environment where they can be learning and manipulating child-friendly materials. There's even arts and crafts and that kind of stuff. So I think this is not going to exclude any group, and it's not going to prevent us from answering those questions, which we're supposed to. I think there's a lot of different people who are students, and we need to move away from the traditional perspective that students are only younger people.
Alderman Clevens.
Thank you for coming and presenting tonight. So I come at this from and I'm not on the committee, so I won't be voting this evening. I will obviously get the opportunity to vote on it when it comes to the full board. But I'm going to share some thoughts and my opinion. So in my estimation and my point of view, there's very few things in life that come for free. Everything has a cost to it. One of the, in particular, when it comes to students, I mean, even at Nashua High, you have to pay to park if you're a student. You have to pay to park if you're a student at Riviera. I don't know if the community college makes you buy a sticker or not, but and you know, it was no different when I was at Nashua High School. You know, in fact, I think the prices were pretty similar to what they were back then. I think it was, but my point being that when you have a car, you have a responsibility to follow the rules and regulations of the road. And if you park in a spot that requires a fee to be paid, then you should pay the fee. The reason that the fee is there at the library is so that the turnover rate doesn't, you know, so basically so somebody doesn't come down there and park all day. Now, I realize that the idea here is that there's a 3-hour limit. It's supposed to be, you know, controlled, and I get that. But I just don't agree with the premise that a student would choose to go to Barnes and Noble or another place simply because those places have free parking. And if that's the case, then I would say to those students that it's worth the money to go to the library because the educational resources there are far more valuable. The other thing that, you know, that crosses my mind is that we have to take a step back and assess what the best needs are for the entire community. And I think this point was brought up in the letter from Chairman Mary Lou Blaisdell. And what I mean by that is there might be a way that we can somehow do a controlled access parking to the library where there are a number of spaces that are free if we truly desire as a community to do free parking there. And we could do it for everybody. So the idea that we should take one group and put their needs above another, I don't particularly like. And so what I'd rather see is this committee hold this and wait for the parking study to be done and then see if through that study there is a way that we can make library parking free for everyone. Because if that's something that we value in this community, then we should value it not only for students, but we should value it for everyone. And so I would hope that we use this as a catalyst to say, how can we provide free parking for all on an equal basis? And I think it's something that the library director has been wanting for a long time. But again, the consequences of doing such a thing are that you're going to have people who are going to go down there and park all day long. So there would have to be some kind of controlled access. But I would rather see it done on an equal basis as opposed to a singular group.
Okay, Alderman Lopez.
Well, first I want to say I believe you. I believe that yes, students go to Barnes and Nobles, and that you came here to tell us that because you know it to be the case, not because you're making it up. I've seen plenty of students at Barnes and Nobles, and I know that it's a pretty popular hangout spot in terms of it being commercially marketed, and that's why the parking is free, because then you can pay for your drinks, and you can pay for your music, and you can be subjected to all kinds of advertisement. But I also think that that given that location and given that popularity, it is restrictive. I think looking at people in terms of their actual need and addressing that need when we're able to as aldermen is our responsibility. I mean, I've had experience with constituents coming forward and presenting a need and very clearly saying, this is what we need. We have data, we have support. We've put a lot of work into this. And then tabling it and then having more discussion and then politics take over. I don't think we need to get quite that deep into this. I think we're talking about parking passes. I think we have a straightforward call to action right now and right here. If we really want to help people access free parking, we shouldn't start by not letting the first group of people that ask for it and have an organized presentation and a workable plan and the support of the library staff, not letting them do that. I don't know that I would have approached this from a downtown improvement committee perspective in the first place. And I don't like the implication that they're now in charge of parking. They haven't seen this presentation. I'm not sure whether they had the opportunity to see or not, and I'm not really sure what the discussion was had, because when I went to go look for the minutes today, I couldn't find them. When I went to ask if any minutes existed, I found I was given a draft, which did not actually cover the discussion. It covered another issue. This letter is twice the size of the minutes that is in draft form right now. The formal minutes of the Downtown Improvement Committee, apparently there wasn't time to do that. So I don't know exactly what discussion took place because that's not public information. What I do know is that these students took the time to present a very straightforward and simple idea. And it's my impression that we're overcomplicating it because a group that did not see the presentation may have had access to the ordinance because that was posted a while ago and may have had a substantive discussion about it, wants us to wait for a parking study of the whole downtown area. And I think that's not necessarily an authority that's given to them. If they want to fund the study, then more power to them. But I think ultimately the responsibility for deciding where parking is and how much it costs is a function of the Board of Aldermen.
Alderman Clay.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for a great presentation. I actually didn't have a question so much about the presentation as the issues of multiple groups' needs and so on. If we did set aside, say we did pass this and we set aside 20 spots and so on, I guess I have two questions. One is, how do we know that it will only be 3 hours, as it said? But before you answer that, my next question is, if other groups did come forward, whether it be seniors, pregnant mothers, mothers with toddlers or fathers with toddlers and so on, would we be able to grant them the use of those 20 and do the same kind of passes? That's what I'm saying. And I think that if we do this, then yes, we should go forward and allow that for anyone who shows the needs of whatever the group is and so on. So, and only because if we set these 20 aside, are we not going to let anybody park there? Or is it just going to be 20 passes so they park wherever they want to park? So it's just with the 20 passes. So if the library had 20 passes and a mother with toddlers comes in, she'll say, could you hold my kids so I can run back out to to put the pass on my car and so on. But so that's kind of what my question is. And then if Alderman Kelly, if you know, or if they would know about the 3 hour rule, how do we know that they'll stick to 3 hours?
Okay.
And
want me
I
to
think
answer.
that was a question through the chair to Alderman
apologize.
Kelly
Yes, I
and our
apologize.
esteemed guests.
I
Yes.
apologize.
Thank you.
No worries.
Apologize, Chairman.
The idea was that there would be a binder. You'd sign in when you get there. You would put your like a business card plastic thing where your card goes, and then the pass goes in the car and comes back. So we would keep track of that. I don't think it's going to be like someone's there for 12 hours and we need to go finding them in the library. I can't imagine studying longer than 3 hours without losing my mind. But it's been a while since I've been in high school or college, so I think that's how we've talked about it. So it would be a pretty simple system of paper, sign in, sign out. You don't get your ID back, which is pretty good collateral when you're a student, unless you pass back the pass. And like we said, the 20 was up to 20. So if we're feeling like we want to explore it and start with only 10, we're open to that. I think it would be a good project to see how it works. Are all 10 being used a lot on the weekends, and we feel like it's really getting the use that we were hoping to get out of it, and we can use that as fodder for other constituent groups that are also saying that. Because I've heard moms say, I go to story hour and I have to rush out because my meter expired. And I was pretty clear that I agree. The library staff feels the same way. Like, there shouldn't be a socioeconomic barrier to using the library. Those resources are there for free for a reason. And if we put a barrier in for people, it really can affect whether or not they're able to use it.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Follow up?
I guess my next question would be, if we open this up to all students, high school students, Revere students, and so on, where they have IDs, what about those students that, Pennachuck, Middlesex School, they don't have an ID, or any of those other kind of things? When I was going to middle school, I used the library constantly. It was right next to my school, and I used it all the time. If nothing else, to take out books, sometimes to read there, because my home was a little chaotic. So I would sit there and I would read, and sometimes I would study and so on. But a lot of the younger kids below high school do not have IDs. So how would they? But their parents drive and bring them there. So you're saying that if a high school student doesn't drive and their parents bring them there and mom and dad are doing something, they wouldn't be able to use the spot?
I'm saying that the
So I
ordinance is written for
apologize.
students.
I apologize.
No.
I went off, yes.
No. Alderman Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am so grateful that an RFP is going to be done on this, because I think this is long overdue. As the alderman from Ward 1, this is an issue I get a lot of. Parking downtown is crazy, and we need some help. I have questions. Is the parking area always full? Are there lots of spaces empty? That's just the first one. Will there be a specific area that the cars would use? And why can't we consider this a pilot program to see what it looks like to bring forward anybody else that's going to request passes or free parking, or that this would be a good opportunity to gather some information that we might not have otherwise. Thank you.
Well, if on that regard, if the alderman can timely wait, I'm holding them off at this particular point till all the aldermen have express their opinions, but I'm going to refer, and some of those questions may be able to be answered by the Director Cummings at the appropriate time. So those are good questions and may
Thank
be
you.
directed to him. Alderman Gedge.
Thank you. Congratulations. I'm glad you came in. This is what I like to see. I like to see people, involved. I have a different opinion. I never paid to go to a library. In fact, anyone who goes to a library, maybe we ought to pay them 25 cents. Libraries have changed, as you probably know. They're more of areas for people to meet. I think the problem is that you're downtown. If Starbucks and a library could get together and work something out, guess what? The library, probably parking could be paid for by Starbucks. The place would be filled. I'm trying to show a little bit of humor here, but there's truth behind this. the library parking lot doesn't make that much money. What do we want? Do we want people in the library? We don't want them in the library? Is the money that important? What's, and if you go to a library, why are you paying for a parking lot? No, I understand why. I mean, et cetera, but don't we want people there? And I think that's hopefully that's your argument. And I do appreciate you coming in. To some people, this may seem like a very small thing. It's not a small thing. We want people to come downtown, and this is one way to do it. And thank you very much. And sorry if I've confused things.
All right. At this time, I would just sort of retro back to the gentleman's comments, Alderman Lopez, making sure that it's parking and for a senior citizen, everybody, not necessarily a rabbit hole. I don't go down rabbit holes because I can't fit. The wife's got me on a diet. Come and see me in another 6 months and maybe I might be able to do it, but really not. The thing is, I think when we make this type of change, we got to look at the global and really peel it back and look at the whole particular thing. I think you have brought up a very good point. You identified what to me is an obvious problem, except here is you brought a solution to your particular part of the problem and not the global looking at it. And since there is other issues with the parking in that vicinity, I am now going to turn to the Director Cummings to explain the RFP and to see what the RFP, I don't know if you're familiar with it, to explain it and to come up with what it will do for us, and then to see if this RFP and what we're going to be looking at may satisfy why you're here this evening. So Director Cummings, if you would. I defer to
Alderwoman Kelly.
Then Alderman
If you wouldn't
Kelly.
mind, I just don't want to forget Jan's questions and I think it's going to get answered before we go into the RFP. So I believe, I didn't have a pen, so you had asked, there are 84 spots, 4 of which are handicap. The lot makes $27,211 a year. It's never full. And like we had pointed out, we don't expect these passes to be out at 100% all of the time. And it wouldn't be specific spots. It would just be, parking enforcement would look for that pass, and if they see the pass, they wouldn't ticket them. And there was one other comment about people parking there all day. Well, if they don't have the pass, then they would get a ticket, just like any other place in the city. Thank you. Did I answer all of them?
I think so.
Oh, the other question was, could this be a pilot? I think it absolutely could.
Yes.
If I may.
Director Cummings.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair. Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development, and for better or for worse, parking falls under my office's purview. So I'm here this evening, and first, I'm going to start my comments by saying I applaud the students that are here this evening for getting civically engaged. I was recently at a town meeting last fall, and I saw a bunch of students present on why it was good for plastic bags to be banned. And that was an amazing presentation. Unfortunately, they weren't very successful in convincing that body and their wisdom of their logic. But it was really great to see students wanting to get engaged in the public policy process. And it was through that engagement that they learned about all the nuanced details that goes into making these regulations that govern us. Because I'm here to say that I don't support this ordinance. It's not something that I can recommend to this body at this time. And there's a few reasons for that. First and foremost, good urban principles tell us that paying for parking is what we should be doing. Nothing in parking is not free. As mentioned, Barnes and Noble's parking lot, although you're not paying for it, you are indirectly by going to the facility, and that cost is just spread out differently. And so we just unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, shift the cost of parking directly onto the consumer, whereas it's bundled in other type of retail environments. And so oftentimes it gets lost on us, or it's a misnomer to think that we're actually not paying for that parking. So anyway, so that's one point that I wanted to make this evening. And so I would caution you, if you start to go down this path, I want to just make it abundantly clear that you are opening the door for other groups to come before you. We hear it often in our office. All different types of demographics, from seniors to low to moderate income individuals to veterans, whatever the case may be. It is demographics groups, rightly so, believe that they should have free parking at the library in the downtown. I just need this body to be aware of, if they value this at a certain way and the community wants to do this, that's your prerogative and your pleasure, that you will be seeing other groups coming before you, and I caution you to just treat everyone equitably. A few months back, I was before you, and I had made some recommendations relative to how to tweak the parking, particularly where I felt the parking was not, we weren't charging enough parking, and we weren't, meeting market standards. And it was made abundantly clear to me, and the message was very loud, that a parking study needed to be done, not just on the deferred capital maintenance necessary in the area, but also in best practices in parking management. And so I took those comments to heart, and I have a request in the escrows for that initiative to be funded. And if it is funded successfully by this body, we have an RFP drafted that would be issued, where we would procure a professional third-party consultant vendor to come in, draft a plan that would be community-based. It would come from the community, but it would also provide recommendations on industry standards, best practices, and what is comparable for like-type communities that offer a similar type of a parking situation or environment. And so, absent that type of data, absent that type of direction, I think that this body could be making making a mistake, and I just want to caution you that if that's the case, I want to just do my due diligence and do my duty by pointing that out to you. I would also suggest, and this is the last comment I'll make on this, is I hear oftentimes about people never like to pay their taxes, and if we didn't necessarily have certain property tax, that maybe we would attract that business into the community, and rightfully so. But there's enough data done, enough survey research that tells us that people do not make their decisions based on cost alone, on what it's going to be. And they freely pay that cost because they like the services that they get, or they like the environment that they're in. Similarly, with this scenario here, I would suggest to you that if the library entered into a licensing agreement with Starbucks, people would be willing to come to the library and use the library and not even think about paying for the parking, because I assure you they're going to be paying more for that latte than they actually do for the parking. So it's not necessarily driven by the cost of parking, although I'm sure it's one factor that actually is going to drive people to that experience. And that's ultimately what you're going for as a consumer, is what is the experience that you're going to receive when you go someplace and spend your dollars. Whether it's Starbucks, whether it's Barnes & Nobles, whether it's the mall, whether it's the library, wherever it may be. And so if we could think about it in terms of the consumer experience and what we can do to drive value to the library's benefit and to the residents of Nashua, I would suggest that would be a better approach. Finally, the last comment, I know I just said that, but second to last comment that I just made is relative to some of the very specific issues and to the resolution, the way the resolution's written. And again, I have no problems with the resolution if that's how the body wants to proceed. But I just want to make you aware of the fact that as written, it would be open to all high schools, all colleges, not just Nashua. So I just want to make that clear. And that's fine if we want to do that, but that's just the way the text is written. It's not written as a pilot program. It would be permanently adopted. So I just want to make sure folks understand that. And then lastly, relative to enforcement, I don't think the enforcing capabilities will be like what some people may think, because we don't have the ability to go into the library, check the library to see if someone's staying for 3 hours in that 3-hour allotment time. What they might do is look at the placard. Chalk is the term that they use, and they would just have to make sure that that person, is in a reasonable period of time staying there. And that's the best type of enforcement that you're gonna get. So I suggest to you, it really wouldn't be enforced all that much, but that may be okay. I just wanna make sure folks know that.
All right, Mr. Cummings, I do have a question. If we did delay this and refer it to wait till the RFP come out, will we have to wait till the whole general study is done, or can you prioritize neighborhoods or objectives in the particular study? I mean, could this be advanced in such a way as to satisfy this, or should it wait to the end of the complete study?
I would recommend to you that you wait till the end, you get the entire report, and then it will be this body that decides as to which policies you want to adopt moving forward, and whether you prioritize. And if it's very clear that this is the first issue you'd want to tackle, then once that report is done, we could absolutely make that a priority.
Okay. We have Alderman Kelly and then Alderman Lopez in the queue. Yes, you may defer.
One of the students would like to speak. Asma, go ahead.
Okay, so as you said,
Can you, unfortunately,
Your name.
give your name,
Okay.
because when it gets transcribed, they kind of recognize our voices because we've been here a lot. But,
okay. So my
Yeah.
name's Asma.
thank you.
So as you said that we pay for coffee and stuff like that from Starbucks, it's only because we go there and we see and it's tempting to buy coffee. But maybe if we were downtown, before we go to the library, we could grab something to eat from a downtown store, like Jaja Bell's or something like that. Because when I drive through downtown, I just I feel like going to these places and stuff. And I never really tried it out, but I feel like before, if we're going to downtown to study, me and my friends could go to Jaja Bell's and get coffee or something, eat, and then go to study.
So if I may, that is the exact abuse that I can tell you that people don't want to have occur. So if you actually do that, that is going to send a message to the community that will be a slippery slope. And that is the biggest reason why, and again, for the record, Director Tim Cummings, we do not want to encourage this type of behavior, because it will be a Pandora's box as to what will happen if the community should have a better strategic approach about the holistic way about going about this. And if you don't want to have paid parking, fine. I'm totally fine with that. But when you start making these special exceptions, it's going to be very hard to police.
Alderman Lopez.
So first, I'd like to just point out that I believe that what was being referred to in terms of shopping downtown wasn't misusing the pass and going into the library, getting the pass, using it for free parking, and then going shopping. I believe I just heard her say she might go get something and bring it to the library. So there was not a plan to commit fraud. Second, while I understand the Economic Development Director's perspective is economic, I don't look at library participants as consumers. I look at them as constituents, because they are paying taxes, they are part of our city, This is like trying to charge people for the fire department. I think the library is an essential public service. It contributes to the further education of our citizens. It's very important that we have a general repository of knowledge, and I think it's equally important that our students have that access to it. I think it's very easy to forget that not everybody is in the same income bracket. Some people can't afford a latte. They might have to buy something or do something if they're going to a store or a restaurant, such as Barnes & Noble's cafe, in order to justify their being there and not just be, oh, great, it's a bunch of free students. But that doesn't mean that they're easily able to do that, and that somebody would gladly just purchase a latte in exchange for a parking space. Because if that were the case, we have plenty of coffee shops and diners downtown, and people still don't like the parking. One of the most frequent comments that I get, not only from the people downtown that are shopping, but from the store owners, is that they wish that parking was for a longer period of time, or that it was easier to use the meters or the apps or whatever. Parking is difficult. It's recognized as a barrier. And while I am glad that we're doing a study, I think my personal opposition, which I voiced pretty clearly to the changes in the parking that were proposed previously, was there was no purpose in raising the prices because we didn't have anything we needed to fund. So I didn't see a reason to increase taxes on people as a crowd management mechanism just based on what other communities were doing. And we had issues with doing that when the focus was just to raise the prices, and we didn't actually consider the context of some of the parking spaces were uncovered, some of them were covered, and we were looking at the same raise just because the goal was to raise the prices. So getting back to the library parking, I still support it. I think that having students come downtown is key. I think having students get into the habit of coming downtown is very important as well, whether they're high school students or they're college students. Riviera's had a lot of students come and go over the years, and not very many of them come downtown for anything other than maybe beat the clock night or trivia at Peddlers or some kind of nighttime drinking thing. I think it would be nice to see students down during the day and participating in the shops when they're open during the day and seeing downtown as a place that is accessible. I don't expect that every student downtown is going to misuse the library pass to do that. I think they might just drive down and become more familiar with the shops. They might drive down Main Street a little more often and see them. And they might get more comfortable with the area because they have something to go to, and then they might branch out from there. So I kind of see this as a beneficial economic impact as well. But I also see the wisdom in using this as a pilot program. And I'm taking those recommendations to heart and suggesting that we do amend it to look at as a pilot program. Because if the downtown parking study does actually support changes to the parking, this might be a reasonable way to work it at the library. Because while the parking department can't necessarily go into the library and check the book and all that kind of stuff, the library security guard certainly can. I've run events where the library security guard has done exactly that and at the library, and they can coordinate with the parking department and say, we have one of the passes that's been here for over 20 minutes or for over 3 hours or whatever. Do you want to come and take a look? Or next time you're down by, take a look for this car. I think there is some reasonable partnerships that can happen that would allow the students' presentation to continue the way that they expected it.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. I appreciate what some of the previous speaker had to say, in particular the part about the previous ordinance to raise the garage fees or whatever. But in regards to this, I think the Director Cummings has it correct. I understand that there's a benevolence here that we're trying to put forward, in that we want to have students be able to come down and park for free to use what should be a free resource. I get that. But the problem is that we're running into discrimination into other demographics. I really believe that. And there are rules of the road, and one of them is parking. I would love to have more students and younger folks come downtown. What they have to understand is that, part of that is you have to pay to park. And one of the reasons why Nashua has people pay to park is because we do all of the festivals. We do the farmers markets every Sunday. We do a variety of things that get funded with those downtown parking dollars. And we're one of the only cities that I know of that funds things like that way. So when you are downtown and you're enjoying a festival or something like that, it's the money that you put into the meter that is paying for those things. So, while I don't think that 20 parking passes for students is going to break the bank, what I do fear is that we would be opening ourselves up to having other groups come in and wanting equal access that students have. And my opinion is that we have to tread very carefully on this. Because if we open it up to one group, we may have to open it up to everybody. And if that's the case, if we have a lawsuit on our hands, or that's the case, then we could lose a lot of money that funds things downtown that we all enjoy and like. So the better alternative, I think, would be to do the study and then figure out a way that we can make parking at the library free, whether that's for a number of spaces or however we have to do it. But let's look at the study and make it free for everybody. I don't think it's a matter of just taking out the meters or doing something, willy-nilly. I want to see, because again, we're talking about $27,000, which that's a lot of money when it comes to that. That's the funding for one or two of those festivals. So, we have to be careful in what we do. But what we might find out is that we can swap some of that revenue that we get at the library to somewhere else and make up for it. So those are the kinds of things that I would like to see happen, as opposed to doing this plan and implementing it right away. And again, my reason for that is because I want to make sure that we're doing things equitably. And it has nothing to do, and I appreciate the work that was done, and I think the plan itself, I think would work. I have no issue with that. I think that there was a lot of thought put into it. I think that if we did implement it, it would absolutely work exactly as intended. But my fear is that other folks would come forward, or we could open ourselves to a lawsuit that somebody says, well, you're treating students or you're treating younger people different than you're treating me as a senior citizen, or me as a veteran, or me as a parent. So that's what I'm afraid of.
I'm going to hold for a second because the chair would like to comment. Can we revisit the slides again? Can you bring back the costs? Okay, if we look at the total revenue parking rate of 75 cents per hour, are you familiar that it's only part and parcel of the parking lot?
Yes.
There wouldn't be it wouldn't be 20 spots that are held off for anybody. It would just be the 20 passes.
Director
that will be given
Cummings,
out.
if you could help me out. The whole parking lot is not 75 cents per hour. That is
Yeah,
adjacent to
just
the
50
library.
50 cents and 75, correct?
Okay,
So we picked the highest one to show
so
what the biggest
students
impact
could
be.
park. And are you also familiar that we removed the meters on Cottage Avenue?
No.
I didn't know that.
Okay, on Cottage, and then I'm only saying this, depending upon where the vote goes now, you should have, as part of your information, on Cottage Avenue, the meters have been removed, which brings it up to, and Director Cummings, please help me, how many, that increases to a 3-hour or 2-hour?
That's a total.
Yeah. And, you know, weighing the balance of the beam here, running in, getting the pass, coming out and putting it back and then bringing it back and everything else, you can walk to Cottage from Cottage Street at a better rate. You know what I mean? It is there. I just want to present that it is there, and it is yeah, a walkable distance, but I just want to bring that up. The second question that I have is to Alderwoman Kelly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Cummings, you brought up other schools may be able to utilize this, and not necessarily city-based schools and everything, and then it's not a pilot program, and was there something else that you brought up into that? So basically,
I just talked about enforcement.
enforcement, so it is an enforcement issues. So this may or may not, depending upon the merit of the ordinance, but it sounds like it needs an amendment.
Is that a question?
Would you, as the author, would you seek to table this at that time until it becomes an amendment and then reheard again by this committee? And I'll just throw that out there for your consideration. You can chew on it and decide, and maybe one of the committee members could reflect your opinion, you know, on that, okay? Sure. All right, yes, Alderman Lopez.
Can I answer you?
Oh, yes, you may, okay, yes.
Thank you. I think I've expressed a couple of times that we discussed it, and if the committee was feeling apprehensive or wanted to maybe do it as a pilot, we were open to that. Obviously, I can't make that motion. I just wanted to address.
Actually, you can.
I'm not part of the committee, though. I can't make it.
You're the primary sponsor. You can make.
Can I still do that?
Yep.
Okay, good to know.
If he says it, it's law.
All right. If it's wrong, I blame that.
I'm glad you're here.
There you go. I'll allow it.
So I'd love to hear from the committee in terms of if we do it as a pilot, what would be your pleasure? What would feel most comfortable to you? We're already at the start of school, so we had talked about that. The other thing that I wanted to point out is we have written it so that it's specifically, and this is what it says, anyone eligible for a Nashua library card who has a valid current high school or college identification. So it is not any student anywhere. And we did talk about it. We talked about the driver's license and that kind of thing, but we wanted to make sure that if RIV students wanted to come, they're not technically, originally it was written as Nashua residents. So students who go to school in Nashua are eligible for a library card. I have a few other comments. I'm happy to hold them. If
You would be happy to hold up? Okay, because the thing is this, I do have Alderman Lopez and Alderman Clemens in the queue, you know, and I'm not trying to cut down, I mean, any debate upon this, but we do have other items before the board tonight. But I'm not trying to limit the debate. You got me here to midnight, and I don't care.
I don't want to keep you here to midnight.
Yeah. But I'm trying to see if we could focus and funnel it down and get to a point that we may want to be at. I first have to recognize Alderman Lopez, Alderman Clemens.
I just have a question for Director Cummings through the chair. Are you in support of the ordinance we have to take up later regarding free parking on holidays?
Can I? That is not before us at this particular time, and that would be debated when that gets introduced.
Okay, because before, when I first put my hand up, Director Cummings made extensive comments about urban planning and the importance of managing and the importance of not doing one before the other. I just heard Director Cummings say yes, but thank you for redirecting that. So I think there are certain cases where we would look at some groups and say it's okay to park for free if we want them to come downtown for specific purposes. I disagree very strongly with Alderman Clemens' characterization of how the events and festivals happen downtown. I think it's a huge disservice to all the donors of Great American Downtown. I think that is extremely inaccurate, and I would encourage you to look at Great American Downtown's back sheet or their annual presentation, because the Downtown Improvement Committee and the parking revenue does not support all of those festivals. There's a lot of donors and a lot of work that goes into it. There's an ever-expanding staff and fleet of volunteers that are working to make those things happen. So I think some people look at parking as funding activities that are happening downtown. I think in a lot of ways it inhibits it. I wasn't the one who created the downtown parking plan, so I don't have the same perspective on it. But again, as the alderman of downtown, I'm frequently asked why we have to charge for Saturday afternoons, or why there's different amounts for different areas. Are those areas less desirable? Do you not want any business in them? I think the library is a public service. I think it's something that people should be able to access, particularly students. So I, again, reiterate my support for it. And finally, I'd like to say, I don't think we're open for any lawsuits here. I don't think that we're disproportionately impacting any protected class. I disagree completely with that characterization as well.
Alderman Lopez, your comments of why this, why that is a good segue into the RFP for the study. Outstanding, thank you. Alderman Clemens.
Thank you. I mean, I hesitate to say, you know, we would do it as a pilot program, again, for the same reasons I stated previously, but what if we did it as a pilot program and opened it up as first come, first serve for anybody? So in other words, if you have a library card in Nashua, you could, on a first come, first serve basis, go up there, give them your library card, they'd give you the pass, and you could park there for free. Because that, and we did that on a pilot basis. That way we're not discriminating against anybody. It's just first come, first serve.
And I'll refer to Director Cummings, but I would answer it, I'm going to attempt to, is why I think we want the RFP to be generated and have the study done to look at, because these good people are bringing up a legitimate issue, you know, and, but looking at the whole picture globally, I think that could be done with this particular study. And that's one of the ideas. I mean, I would like to say, I was going to save this to the end, but I would like to say to you, particularly to you three, you have evidently picked a very meritorious discussion. As you can see, the way government works here, the lively discussion that is going on here, I commend you for bringing it forward. Regardless of what the vote is going to be today, I thank you for bringing it forward, you know, because it gives something, you have identified something that was underlying that now has seemed to be rise to the top that we're going to solve at some point. And I think we're going to solve it perhaps with you people in mind, and as well at all others, you know, when we come down to Alderman Clemens' suggestions and Alderman Lopez and everybody else's. This is what we do here, you know, so again, I thank you, regardless of what happens with the vote tonight. But I do thank you for doing that, because you have spurned something that is very important. And Alderman Schmidt, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think the purpose here is to give away a parking spot. I'm pretty sure that the people who are going to go down anyway will go down anyway. I think the purpose of this is to actually encourage students who might otherwise not go to come down. And I think that that's really a very valid purpose for this. And I think the RFP would really benefit from having the data that could be gathered on this. If it were just a short-term study, I think it would benefit the RFP. And so I'm going to say I'm very much for this if it is considered a short-term study. Thank you.
Okay. I hope you have a motion in your shirt pocket. Alderwoman.
Can I put a point on it, and then I will make a motion if you'd like. Okay. So first of all, I wanted to similarly say what you were saying about the lively debate. I hope you guys know that this is, I mean, there are things that we talk about for about 5 minutes and go on. So you have brought up something. I hope you're able to see how things work. And I really appreciate all my colleagues for really vetting this and having a conversation. I think it's great to see that we're not always on the same page. Sometimes, you know, people feel that we need to pay for parking downtown, and sometimes people don't feel that way. I obviously, I think a pilot program makes a lot of sense. I think that doing this study also makes a lot of sense. I don't think we're going to hear a whole lot different than what everybody in this horseshoe has said they've heard from seniors, from moms, from students who want to go downtown. I'm part of the business community downtown, and I've seen so many businesses come and go. And multiple times it's been, well, if I go to Amherst Street, it's free parking. I remember one of the very first meetings I came to, the woman who owned Graffiti Paint Bar was really, really excited to come downtown, and she just closed. So I think it is something, a bigger discussion, and I let them know when they decided this is what they wanted to do, that it was going to be a bigger discussion, and I'm really welcoming that. So thank you, everyone. I would move to make this a pilot program. I would like to start with the school year, see how everybody feels like that. So it would start when we put it in until June.
The
Do you need me
chair
to say
does-
specific
Well,
language?
the chair does have other questions with the ordinance, and I don't have it verbatim right here in front of me, but it's been brought that it could include other schools, not necessarily Nashua schools, in its dictation.
No.
I was led to believe by Director Cummings that may be an interpretation. Director Cummings, could you clarify that for us, please?
So, I mean, it comes down to how do you define eligible Nashua Library card? So if non-residents are eligible for a Nashua Library card and have a valid current high school or college identification, they would qualify for this program. So,
Correct. And actually, if Jen wants to speak to this, so we actually did do that on purpose because, for example, Rivier students are not considered residents, but they are students. But in order to have a library card,
Right, so, am I on?
Oh, you're on, yes. Can you identify yourself, please?
I'm
Thank you.
Jen McCormick, I'm the library director, and I have no authority over the parking lot whatsoever. And I think you all know that at the library, we give everything we have away for free, we loan it, and we just hope that people bring it back, so I kind of lean in a more liberal direction. To answer the question that's asked, to qualify for a library card, you need to live, work, or go to school in the city. So yes, the way it's been written, students who don't live in Nashua but go to school in Nashua would be eligible for the parking pass.
Correct.
Which I think that would be a value of our board, that we allow them to use library cards because they're part of the educational system,
So,
Director Cummings.
so if I may, to make my point, if I'm a Hudson or whomever student, I work at the Pheasant Lane Mall, I work here, I'm eligible for a library card, I go to school outside of Nashua, I have a valid current high school ID, you'd be qualifying for this program as written. I just want to be clear that that's
if
my
you have a
interpretation.
valid ID from a Nashua school.
It doesn't say that. It says current high school or college identification. It doesn't say Nashua High School. It doesn't say Nashua College.
we can add that.
I'm
If
just
you want the
I-
word
again,
was a valid Nashua high school or college identification.
So,
We can add that if that.
Well,
Is the pleasure.
this is, Alderman Clay, can you hold on? This is what I'm saying. Do you want to take this into, I mean, unless you feel an amendment here within the chamber, you're 100%, but it may need to be, trimmed up a little bit here, So,
I would
yes.
say if that is a concern that people have, we can add the word Nashua and we can add pilot program. to end on
Well,
the last day of school.
would you recommend tabling so that you can bring a clean bill to this committee?
No. I mean, I'd like to see if we can make it, and we're not making big
Okay,
sweeping
okay, I'm just
legal
saying, just to make sure
language
that it
changes.
is gotta be done correctly. Okay, before everybody gets excited, Alderman Clay.
Write down what you want.
I just want to make one comment, and when we're going through the changes, that I just, if it were possible, again, I'm not part of this committee, but saying Nashua to me is not good enough, only because I could be a Nashua resident, have a Nashua library card,
Yep.
but I go to UNH, or I go to another school, I go to Massachusetts school.
Yep.
I should still have the same, that's what I'm saying is, I think it's a slippery slope if we just put Nashua. And I'm not saying that any of those students are even going to use it, I just don't want to cordon off a particular area, and it's not always going to be Nashua schools, so.
That's a really bad point. And to that point, there were probably 4 or 5 students who worked on this all summer long who go to Georgetown and go to out-of-state colleges, but might want the access next summer when they're here. So that's a good point.
Director Cummings.
If I may, to help move this conversation along, it would help
Yes.
if Alderwoman Kelly wrote down the amendment she would like now that the chair then could read, and it could then be
Exactly.
adopted.
Okay, I can do that. Can I ask the board, it still says will not exceed 20 passes. Are we okay with that?
What is that?
So it says the total number of parking passes available at one time would not exceed 20 passes, and the total number available will be set and adjusted based on usage. So we could start at 10, see how it goes, adjust it up, adjust it down, depending on how it's being used.
That may be a compromise better, yeah.
Okay.
A small program, pilot program, it can't be fixed, you know. All right. While you're writing it up, is there any other further comment on this at this time? Then again, I'm gonna, at this particular time, I'm gonna hold, yes, we have a comment?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna hold further discussion on 019-051 and move the agenda while the amendment is being prepared. And we have other worthwhile items to be discussed. I would like to thank our guests.
Thank you for having us.
I thought this was gonna be a very easy evening, you know, but again, I thank you for coming forward with this. I think we're gonna do something with it, and, you know, and we shall see what the full board thinks. So again, I thank you for your participation in government, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. We really
Thank you.
appreciate your feedback.
Okay.
You guys can wait and see if you want to wait for the vote. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
While the, excuse me, what?
He was asking about the presentation.
Okay, yeah, and
Flash drive.
the reason I'm gonna come out of that, we'll still leave that hanging, and we'll reconvene on that particular ordinance, just to move, because to give Alderwoman Kelly time to write it, and we have other things that we could do while she's transcribing it. So therefore, I'm gonna turn to the clerk to the regular items on the agenda.
Okay, new business ordinance, ordinance 19-049, authorizing free holiday parking at meters in Zone 3, which includes the Elm Street and High Street parking garages from December 9th through January 3rd. Mr. Chair, I recommend final passage.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Alderman Lopez.
I just point out to the public that while we just had lengthy discussion about one area, this is something we do every year, so that's why we're probably going to move much quicker on it.
Any other? Director Cummings.
Thank you. If I may be, for the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. I was asked earlier this evening my position on this ordinance. I want to say for the record, this would not be my preference. I would not recommend it to you. However, this has seemed to be part of the culture here in Nashua. It has been long-standing. It's understood to be part of a tradition, and that's great, and that's a value that this community has created, and so therefore, That's why this should proceed. I would also note it's in an area that is not as detrimental in terms of financial impact, and it is a nice thing that we can do on a limited temporary basis for the downtown.
So happy holidays.
There you go. Any other discussion? Yes, Alderman Clemmons.
And it doesn't discriminate on what class of person you are either.
Anybody, everybody.
Thank you.
Don't celebrate
Okay.
holidays.
I'm gonna, seeing no further discussion, I'm gonna call the vote to make the holidays bright. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There's no Scrooges here. To the clerk.
Okay, we have ordinance 19-050, changing the location of the parking permits for Delianis House residents. Mr. Chair, I recommend final passage.
Thank you. Alderman Lopez?
Yep, just to clarify, as one of the co-sponsors, so the city decided when Delena's house went in, there were issues with parking for the residents there. Delena's house serves homeless veterans and veterans in transition looking for housing. So it's definitely a very helpful program to our city. But they didn't have anywhere to park because of the location of the building. So the city allowed for specific spots to be left on the garage of the High Street garage. What we found, though, is that the majority of individuals who are veterans and homeless have mobility impairments or disabilities, so the spaces were extremely underutilized. Meanwhile, down underneath the overpass, those were also being underutilized because geographically they were really only serving that one location. So the idea here is to flip it and use the spaces for what they originally intended, helping the people living in Delena's house specifically, and then opening the more general use ones over at the garage to where they'll be put to better use. Additionally, and Director Cummings can clarify this, but we will be collecting fees for that, I believe.
High Street garage, yeah.
Yep. But Alderman Wilshire and I have been able to get donations so that the fees aren't going to be paid for by the veterans. They're being paid for by organizations that support veterans, such as the VFW and Elks Club and donors like that. So we still get money, but veterans don't have to pay it.
Director Cummings.
Yes, thank you. Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. So this ordinance was drafted and presented to my office. We fully support this. We think it's a great way to solve an issue that has been abundantly clear to us, with us reserving parking spaces that were not being used, and therefore it seems like a great win-win solution all the way around.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. We have now before us, we're going to delay on 1951, and we have tabled in committee. There is the petition to release the facade easement. This is in reference to the Country Tavern Hotel in that vicinity. I'll direct Director Cummings. Do you have comments on this?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, Director Tim Cummings. So this ordinance before you, I'm asking for it to be continued. That is also a request of the applicant as well. We're still waiting to have a recommendation by the planning board. I will tell you that we are actively trying to work with the applicant for a reasonable solution for all parties involved. I am hopeful that by the time this group meets again in September, I'll be able to make a presentation to you.
Okay. So therefore, without objection, I make the recommendation to keep R-19-147 to remain on the table. See no objection, it shall remain there. No, excuse me, I read the wrong one.
Well, that's the right one.
That-
That's the facade easement.
No, 147. Well, keep the Country Tavern Facade on the table. I don't have the exact number. But also before us is to take R-19-147. Can the clerk please read the title?
That would be authorizing purchase and sale of city land at 21 Pine Street, map 77, lot 17, and land of Public Service Company of New Hampshire, DBA Eversource Energy, at 3 Pine Street Extension, map 77, lot 2A.
Can the clerk make a recommendation to take that from the table?
I will do so.
Okay, all those in favor to take R 19-147 from the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, open discussion for R 19-147, but first I'm going to refer to Director Cummings to give us further briefings on this resolution.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. So I'm here this evening to ask that you favorably endorse this resolution. This has been a long time coming and something that has been a product of not just my office, but a lot of offices here in City Hall. I want to take a moment and recognize that we have representatives from Eversource here this evening with us, who's our partner in this resolution. And what this basically does is it helps bring to fruition a better vision of the mill yard, because we will be able to slide the current Eversource substation a little bit further north to vacant land and free up land that could be developed. And so this has been the product of, I would say, at least a year's length of conversation to get here this evening. It has been vetted by our planning board, Mine Falls Advisory, and a lot of City Hall departments. So we're hopeful that we can get approval this evening from this committee to send it on before the Board of Aldermen, because time is starting to get to be of the essence. I know Eversource is anxious to get under construction with the new substation as quickly as possible. So with that being said, Mr. Chair, I turn it back to you.
Thank you. Any additional questions, Director Cummings, on this? I know you have been working on this for quite some time, so I'm glad that you got it to a final solution there. So therefore, would the clerk like to make a motion?
I will recommend final passage.
Okay, motion before us, final passage on R 19-147. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderman Clements, could you ask Alderman Clee to come out, because the next item to be discussed is one of her bills. I think she's in the office. Yeah, thank you. We could pause for a second.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Elizabeth LaRocca with Eversource Community Relations. Just wanted to thank you for your time this evening, consideration, and the director's support as well.
Well, thank you. I know there was this has been on the docket for several months, but it shows we can work and get it done, and so I'm very happy to come to a solution that everybody finds acceptable. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming tonight. Okay, Alderman Clee, I did have him get you because I know you have an interest in this, okay? And that is R 19-150.
Take it from
Can
the table.
the clerk just read by title only without a recommendation?
This is on 19-150, authorizing the City of Nashua to enter into a leasing agreement for a parking area off Artillery Lane, Nashua, abutting map 63, lot 45.
Okay. At this particular time, there seems to be ongoing active negotiations that, due to confidentiality of the negotiations, we really cannot discuss at this particular time. It would be my recommendation that it would remains on the table to further the investigation. And without objections, they will keep R 19-150 on the table. Without objection? Very good. All
I don't
right.
know what to object to, so sure.
I like it.
I tried. I mean,
Now, will look like we have,
We still have Bauer Street.
yes,
Leave it on the table.
and we also have that on the table without objection to remain on the table, 01936. Can the clerk please read the title?
That would be designating an additional section of Bauer Street, one-way easterly.
And Director Cummings, do you have a comment?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. I am pleased to provide this body with an update on this. Yesterday, I received an email that a study has been concluded by the Nashua Planning Area Commission, where they've looked at this area in question. Their transportation folks have some recommendations. What I would suggest is offline, we create a working group type meeting for those who are interested, similar to what we did back in March, April, for this very initiative, and see if, based on the results that NRPC presents to us, if we can plot a pathway forward. And I'd be happy to organize that meeting.
Okay. Would you, to that avail, would you like the appointment of 2 aldermen on that group?
Sure, yeah.
Would consider that?
My understanding is last time around it was Alderman Lopez and I believe Alderman O'Brien, both of
Yes.
you went to that.
Seeing that they are familiar with that and with,
I think we should include Alderman Karen too, since it's literally the border of our 2 wards.
you know, us Irish have it, you throw another cup of water in the soup, everybody eats. There you go, okay. The chair appoints Alderman Lopez and myself to that committee, and the chair will ask, I don't have the authority, she's not a member of the committee, but I will extend the invitation to Alderman Karen, seeing that is her ward, and I think that is prudent. Thank you, Alderman Lopez.
Alderman Lopez wishes not to invite her wrath.
We all do.
Okay. Very good. And Director Cummings, you'll call the date of the first meeting of that?
I will organize that.
All right,
yes.
thank you. Okay. All right. Without objection, again, I will now reconvene 019-051. Will the clerk please read it to remind us by title, please?
That would be providing free public library parking for up to 3 hours for Nashua students using the Nashua Public Library.
I'm just passing out the ordinance and.
You are much more efficient.
Thank you very much. Usually help me.
Outstanding. Thank you.
There's a copy of the amendment and the original ordinance for you guys. And I can move and read it once I get back to my seat.
Super, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Will the clerk please read the paragraph with the amended part, please?
Just the amended part or the entire?
Yes.
Just the amended part. This program will operate as a pilot program with an expiration date of 6/16/20. However, 60 days prior to expiration, a report will be made to the BOA to review success and consider continuation.
Okay.
Do I have to make the formal amendment?
Bill, you want to make the motion to, as amended?
Yes, I would like
Okay.
to move as
Motion,
amended.
excuse me, okay, there's a motion to, and you look for, to accept the amendment, but a discussion on the motion? Director Cummings?
Yep, if I may, Mr. Chair, I would advise that you read the motion or say the motion as follows. This motion would be to delete period and quotation at the end of the paragraph and insert the following. This program will operate as a pilot program with an expiration date of June 16th, 2020. However, 60 days prior to the expiration, a report will be made to the Board of Aldermen to review success and consideration continuation, period, close, quotation.
So moved.
So agreed? Okay, and hopefully that will be transcribed into it. I'll get Alderman Clea and Alderman Clemmons afterwards, yes.
Just one comment. I did help Alderman Shoshana Kelly, she dictated it, I wrote for her. And I should have mentioned this. The only thing we might want to add is who does the review.
I was going to just say that.
In terms of what committee?
Yeah, no, it says that a report will be made to the BOA. We probably should have mentioned who would be responsible for doing that report. Otherwise, it just hangs out there.
Sure.
So,
Okay, and Alderman Clemmons, then we're Alderman Lopez.
No, my question was the same
Okay.
Alderman, please.
Alderman Lopez.
Can we get the students to do it? I mean, they did this.
That's what I was thinking.
They can probably get the data from the library since they collect all kinds of data.
I think it would be good for them to get in and see how it was working too.
What would,
So I think the comment from Alderman Lopez was, let's make the Youth Advisory Committee do that report and make sure that, they review how it's going, and bring them back at that point. Open to other suggestions, but.
Alderman Clemmons?
Yeah, I think it would be important to get their input, and I think that they should be part of the report, but I would like to also see it come from the library and also from the Economic Development Department as well. So I think input from all three.
So would you want that to be listed out? I mean, I think inherent in the Youth Advisory Committee making that study would be discussions with economic development and parking.
Director Cummings? Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be good to put that in the ordinance.
Okay.
So the amendment is, we're amending it again here, just.
We haven't actually approved the amendment, so we're just wordsmithing right now.
Right.
Correct.
So we'll change it to, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Will be made by,
The Youth Advisory Committee in consult with economic development, the library, and parking. I guess economic development is already covered on parking, yeah, and the library. That should be enough.
You have, for your consideration, have you not eliminated a downtown improvement committee on that? And therefore, just to identify, they did send us a letter. Evidently, they have a weighted balance, an opinion on this. And should they not also have, like I say, some input as well on this? Alderman Clemmons?
The Director Cummings is a member of the Downtown Improvement Committee as part of the ordinance that governs that. And so I think that he could be the liaison to that committee just by the fact that he is a member of that committee. So I don't think it's necessary to include them because we have Director
Right.
Cummings there.
I remember we talked about making sure it's all inclusive. This is one of them. You know what I mean? To all committees, particularly, where they sit. Director Cummings, would that be a viable, where in your representation that would come under? Okay. Director Cummings?
Yes, thank you. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the Youth Advisory Committee will be producing the report in consultation with Economic Development / Parking and the library. And of course, I think other stakeholders will be consulted beyond that, Downtown Improvement Committee and others. And we can ensure that happens. My question to the body is, what is success? And I think you should define what success is so you can accurately measure it.
Alderman Lopez?
I think I'd rather just do a pilot where you collect data rather than decide what the outcome's going to be before you collect it.
We could remove the word success to review and consider continuation. Because I think everyone's definition of success, and I apologize, I did not raise my hand, sorry, is going to be different.
Correct.
I'm sure Alderman Schmidt would have deferred to you anyway, so Alderman Schmidt. Yes.
Instead of success, how about the outcome? Much clearer
Right,
outcome.
right.
Can I request that you read that back with those changes?
Yes.
I would gather at the end of this program, and being at 60 days, the pros and cons of it will be rehashed again. So I think the yardstick that would be used to measure success or not would be utilized in common sense at that particular point. Anyways, but Director Cummings, you do bring up, I just hate to put myself personally, put a number, if they only say that these parking passes were used 2%, you know what I mean? What is success? You know what I mean?
Some might argue that's success.
Exactly, you know what I mean? So, but I think it could
We'd know,
weigh, I
yeah.
think this would, the pilot program, I love sunsets. I love watching them, and I like resolutions with them. You know what I mean? That has it in such a way that we can look at it and clear it up if it does pass the full board. Alderman Lopez.
I would point out, though, that all of us in this room, except for Alderman Kelly, are up for re-election, so we may not even be here, or we may be here. So we can't speak for a future board. If we over-identify what outcomes or successes or expectations are, we're kind of nailing them down.
You're absolutely correct. We never speak for any future bodies of government, but they will speak on their own, believe me, and refer to us. All right. I'm going to ask that we accept the amendment on,
Can we reread it?
19-051.
okay, on that. All those in favor signify by saying aye to the amendment.
Aye.
Aye.
Alderman Clee, do you have a question on the
The
amendment?
question, I had to vote.
I was trying to say is that, have we really read the amendment with these last changes in it? You want to reread it? If
Okay.
you don't mind me
Yes,
saying.
okay, point well taken, withdraw that. Can the clerk please reread? So there is a question on the amendment, just to make
For the
sure it's
people, yeah.
accuracy, please.
This is the phrase as it was added. This program will operate as a pilot program with an expiration date of 6/16/20. However, 60 days prior to expiration, a report will be made to the Board of Aldermen to review outcome and consider continuation. Outcome by the Youth Advisory Committee with the Library and Economic Development.
Discussion on the amendment, Alderman Clee.
May I ask that it say, prior to expiration, a report by the Youth Advisory Committee in consult with ... will be made to the BOA to review outcome and consider continuation.
That sounds good. I'll
So
just
after the word report,
Yep,
I
I'll
would
just
put
move
the
that up there.
by Youth Advisory.
Yep. Clearer.
This is not clean, okay? And it's got to come down to the transcriber. And then it's got to get on Pony Express up to legal. So I recommend to Alderwoman Kelly, as the main sponsor, to do diligence, and I know that you will.
Yep, I will.
But to make sure before, whatever the vote outcome is of this committee, that it does say what you want it to say before it gets to the board, okay? Because this is kind of flying right here, and just to make sure it's accurate, okay? And I think we're doing good diligence, I'm just saying, to make sure that we get it. So a follow-up would be in order. Thank you for my, okay. So again, did we vote on that? No, we didn't. So any other amendments to the amendments of the amendment? Alderman Clee, what do we do when you amend so many bills up at the State House?
Run.
We usually table it till we get.
Yeah, I
Or we
understand
run
that.
down, we run
Yeah,
downstairs
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
OLS.
Okay.
We ran downstairs.
Yeah.
We run downstairs, have them reprint it, and then hand it to everybody, because they won't go by.
Boy, here we go, okay. 019-051's up for further amendments. Seeing none? Okay, I'll call the vote of the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Now, we come down to the vote of 019-051 as amended.
Amending final passage.
And with the recommended final passage, any discussion on the motion? There is, I do. And the thing is, again, I thank our guests for coming, but I don't see the 5-alarm fire over the horizon on this particular issue. I think what you brought today is something that we need to fix for sure. But I don't think we had to do it tonight. And particularly when we look at the potential of an RFP, and it does come down. Our forefathers came up with a free library system so that all of us could get into educated, and that has worked well for our democracy. Unfortunately, we are now charging people to park in front of part of our democracy. I understand that. But to fix the problem, we have to look at also too, whether it's the veterans or the elderly or anything else. And these questions aren't answered, in particularly with this particular. So therefore, I am not going to support it based upon the reason of I would have liked to have the the report that is pending to come out that looks at other and all aspects of the city, particularly within the downtown. And because that may make a recommendation, we don't know, to relook at the library parking, and what we do here this evening may be mute and maybe come back and to make that change. And again, if this had something other than the 75 cents per, time per hour, 75% per hour, I don't find that life-threatening, to come up, and particularly the way this was amended and everything else like that. It's something that I think we could have probably slowed down a bit, but I'm willing to support what the board tells me to support with this committee. So therefore, just to explain, I am not going to support it. I'm not saying it's not a bad idea. It's an idea whose time has come. I would have liked to have waited for the report. Any other discussion on it? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. Okay, the ayes have it, and 019-051 passes.
Is recommended as amended.
Pardon?
I'm just clarifying for the students back here. It's
Okay.
recommended as amended. It's
Right.
still going to go to the full board
As amended.
Good.
as amended.
Okay. I think, have we done it all?
We did it.
Wow.
And then some.
Wow. You guys are good. Okay, general discussion. Alderwoman Kelly.
I just want to thank everyone. I think this was a great evening of seeing legislation come up and having discussions. And thank you for your time and allowing the Youth Advisory Committee to bring this forward. So I appreciate that.
Anybody else? Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. I too want to thank you all for coming this evening. I am going to ask a question of Corporation Counsel just to make sure that this isn't violating anybody else's civil rights or putting us in a predicament where we might run afoul of civil rights laws. If that's the case, where we do have the authority to do this with a pretty clear conscience without having to worry about having to give the same privilege to another protected class of folks, then it certainly will get my support, but I'm going to go with what Corporation Counsel says.
Alderman Lopez.
I just wanted to point out that yesterday was our filing period. Many of us are up for elections, so good luck to everybody who's running.
Thank you. And good luck to everybody. Yes. Anybody else? Yes, Alderman Gedge.
General comment?
Yeah.
A week or so ago, Mrs. McCarthy rang the bell to begin the Greeley Park 66th year of the opening of the Greeley Park Art Show. This is a beginning tradition. She enjoyed herself. She was also interviewed for a public access television show, so you'll be hearing more about that. Also, we came up with something that may interest, a little help from the city, financial, not much. We had 60 artists this year, 120 artists next year, music across the street, just acoustic, nothing large, and the first annual dog and cat show, who will be, I'm sure, would want to be put on by our friend sitting next to us, Ms. Keel, who, well, okay.
Like slid right out of the way, like, I'm not in this.
I had to say that because
Trust me, it's
I'm
clean.
not sure if I had to run, but anyway, it should be fun. One other thing, and I just found out tonight, as people know, we did build some studios for artists. It's been slow putting people in there. Last night, the first person from Lowell came, looked at it, was absolutely ecstatic, called up 4 more people want to come in. That means it's completely filled. That means at this particular point, I will be sharing a studio with someone. Also, this is interesting, Tim came up with an idea because we have those mini studios, okay, where people can come in and put their stuff and then use it. And I was calling it a closet. So Tim says, you can't call it a closet. So I said, okay, Tim, what would we call it? And he said, how about a phone booth? So a young person said to me, what is it? And I said, it's more like a phone booth. And the person said, well, what is a phone booth? And I said, it's a closet with a phone inside of it. Anyway, the mini studios, hopefully we can get 1 or 2 of them rented, which means an artist can come in, their stuff is there, they can take it, they can bring it out into the public area, they can start working. That means if those are full and the others are full, we now can find more space to rent studios because now we're starting to make money. So to Tim Cummings, thank you very much. Also yourself over there helped design part of it. Thank you very much.
For the record, Alderman Schmidt. Yeah,
Yeah, I want to get the names right. Also,
you're doing a fine job.
Thank you very much. Mr. McCarthy, obviously, the mayor was really special about this, and you all got to come down and see it because stuff is now getting on the wall. Don't laugh at me too much, will you, please? All right, so anyway, that's kind of good news. That makes me feel good because I wanted them rented, and thank you, Tim, and we got to talk because we've got to do more space. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Gedge. Anybody else? General discussion? Okay, seeing none. Public comment? There you go.
I just want to say thank you for all your feedback. Also, thank you. I'm George. I'm a senior at South. And I also want to say thank you to some of the people on the Youth Advisory Committee that weren't here. Hopefully I don't forget anyone. Ben Talerski, Haley Sweeney, Waithira Kirito, Jerry Kirito. I think that's it. Yep. And so, again, thank you to all of you. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Public comment? Seeing none. Remarks by Alderman? Seeing none. No reason for a non-public session. Is there a motion?
Alderman Lopez.
Alderman Lopez. Okay, a motion to adjourn. We'll call it at 20:53 or 8:53.